Nothing like tax talk and productivity to rev up your Monday morning, folks. But it is a key week on that front, with the Treasurer's highly anticipated economic roundtable starting in Canberra tomorrow. Things kick off in earnest today, though, with the Productivity Commission Chair Danielle Wood outlining her views at the Press Club. Joining us live on this Monday morning is the Liberal Senator Jane Hume. Good morning, Jane. So Danielle Wood, she's going to say regulatory hairballs are choking our economy. It's a wonderfully vivid turn of phrase that's aimed at both the current government and your former government. Is she right?
Yes, she is right, Pete. Let's face it, productivity should be the #1 issue. In fact, the Coalition have been saying for the last 3 years that improving productivity is the only way to get that economic growth that Australia so desperately needs. And in fact, productivity has gone backwards over the last 3 years, backwards by about 5%. It was one of the recommendations of the Cost of Living Committee that I chaired that we had a national cabinet into productivity. Now, this isn't a national cabinet, but it is a round table, so I'm hoping for the best. I think Danielle Wood has already belled the cat on this one, as had Michelle Bullock before her. She said that unless we got productivity moving, that Australia would be smaller and poorer. So we would like to see some regulatory changes to this. We want to see immediate action. I know that the Prime Minister has come out and said that these are potentially long-term projects. I don't think that's good enough. We want to see real, tangible action coming out of this productivity roundtable, not just a convenient shroud, a Trojan horse for existing Labor measures, existing Labor agenda.
OK, get to some of those measures in a moment, but you didn't improve productivity when in power. So is that something that's easier said than done?
We know that productivity was slow. It's been slow right around the world, but productivity was positive under a coalition government. It's been negative under a Labor government.
It hasn't moved anywhere for 10 years.
And that's meant that our standard of living has gone backwards. It's gone backwards in the last 3 years because productivity has failed and inflation has gone up. In fact, it was a previous Reserve Bank governor that said unless we can get productivity moving, there will be no wage rises that aren't inflationary. This is why it is so important.
Right.
Without productivity, we can't have economic growth unless we simply grow Australia by increasing population. That's what we've seen in the last 3 years as the population has increased so dramatically rather than productivity.
Let's rip through a few measures then, Jane. First of all, before we get to some of these ideas that Danielle Wood is proposing today, if you had a seat at the table this week, what would you argue?
Well, we've said that we'd like to see regulatory change, particularly in the area of housing approvals and environmental approvals, making sure that we get things moving faster, get those projects moving faster, whether it be new housing or whether it be new developments.
So it looks like that's really happening, though. Jim Chalmers is open to that, right, though? So are you pleased about that?
Well, I'm glad he's got an open mind. Let's make sure that the Prime Minister does too, because let's face it, we've seen both Jim Chalmers and the Prime Minister on very different pages about this productivity roundtable. 1 minute something's on the table, the next minute it's off the table. Right. 1 minute it's urgent, the next minute it seems to be a long-term project. This isn't good enough. That's why we want to see real, tangible actions.
Okay. So do you think an aggressive approach to deregulation, like Danielle Wood will say today, will speed up housing approvals?
We would hope so, yes, that should be the case. We also want to make sure that
how do you get the states
don't see industrial relations
and all of that involved?
Well, that's, I think, the next step, isn't it? Which is one of the reasons why the Cost of Living Committee suggested that a national cabinet would be an appropriate approach to deregulation. That's exactly what we want to see. It's not just about a talk fest in Canberra. We have to make sure that all of the states and territories are on board too.
Would the Coalition support a carbon price?
Well, the Coalition will be interested and open-minded about any reforms that are put on the table. What we don't want to see is this as an excuse to raise taxes, particularly raise taxes that are going to affect Australian workers, small businesses and retirees. And that seems to be the government's agenda right now. If there is going to be genuine tax reform, it has to be in order to drive productivity. There has to be a benefit for all Australians at the end of it.
But you're open to a carbon price?
Well, we're open to tax reform. I think at carbon price, well, I want to be able to see exactly what the benefit is. Is this the critical path to improving productivity?
Okay.
Now, if it is, we should be open-minded to it. But if it isn't, if it's just an excuse to raise taxes, particularly on small businesses, well, that would take Australia backwards, not
the
forwards.
Prime Minister, the government have said that there's not going to be any new taxes for this term now. If there is going to be a new tax, then they'll take it to the next election. So does that answer that question for you, or do you remain doubtful?
Well, I very much remain doubtful. That was exactly what they said prior to the last election. The first thing they did was introduce a new tax on superannuation, but it wasn't just a tax, it was a tax on unrealised capital gains. So you can see exactly what the government's agenda here is. In fact, their budget over the next 4 years and over the forwards, and indeed over the medium term, is entirely dependent on raising taxes through unrealised capital gains. Now, they don't seem to be able to get that through the parliament right now. There isn't enough support for it. If that is the case, well, what else are they going to raise taxes on?
OK, we'll leave it there. Jane Hume, good to see you though on this Monday morning. Have a great day. We're off to a break. Coming up, thousands of